Right then, developments today in retail, which is one of the sectors taking an absolute hammering from coronavirus. This one quite close to home, actually. INTU, one of the biggest shopping centre owners in the UK, has gone into administration. It says its centres will stay open, though. It actually part owns the St David's Centre in Cardiff. And we did report earlier in the week that the centre is not at risk. We can speak to Kate Hardcastle, who's a retail expert. Hi there.
Hi, Gareth. This is a big one.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, look, I'm going to be really parochial, first of all, because the kind of the travel to shop area, when you're allowed to travel, is enormous for Cardiff City Centre. Does that still stand? Is the St David's Centre still not at risk because of this?
They're going to keep all the doors open, even of the properties that are wholly INTU owned. So the properties' doors need to be open. That's how any shopping centre stands any chance of making money in the short term. The medium to longer term plan for the whole portfolio, I would imagine, would be generally under discussion.
Right, OK. They own some of, I mean, St David's is big, but they own some of the really big shopping centres, don't they? The people, even if they've not been there, will have heard of.
That's why it's so significant. It's Gateshead Metro Centre, it's Trafford Centre, it's Lakeside. It's almost these shopping centres that are almost small town sizes in terms of their scape. They are significant on the UK map. They are certainly places of huge employment. Now, this isn't just down to the coronavirus pandemic and lockdown. This has been brewing for some time. INTU have got very complex financial infrastructure and they've got a lot of debt, and that debt is raised against properties that just do not have the value they once did. Now, that's borne out of the fact of our change in shopping habits and the fact that many brands that you would find in these big shopping centres are the very same brands that you and I have talked about over the past few years, either with store closures, with wanting to reduce the size of store that they've got in these shopping centres, or indeed the ones that of late have been saying they're going to be having negotiations with their landlords. And a landlord is exactly a shopping centre like INTU.
Look, this may be an impossible question to answer, but is there a possibility this might have happened then even without coronavirus?
We'll never know, but it's certainly possible. There were certainly restructuring talks. There were certainly looks at one point a couple of years ago about trying to find new buyers and offers made. So it's not to say that it wouldn't have happened, but the coronavirus has put everything on fast forward. So we've seen the rise of online over the past 10 years. I remember 20 years ago sitting in a room being laughed out, having a conversation with retail big wigs saying no one's ever going to buy stuff online. So we've seen that change significantly. And what happened in lockdown, non-essential stores closed. So those who were a bit more not sure if it's for me, online shopping, that was the only choice. So you've seen probably years of change in 12 weeks. Adding to that, we're all getting these warning bells and alarms about a recession due. That is not good for consumer confidence. That makes consumers think, I'm going to not buy anything I don't really need here. And if there is a desire to spend money, guess where we're spending it at the moment? It's those holidays that we wanted to desperately have this year that we're now booking for next year. So it's going to be an incredibly challenging time for anyone in retail, anyone. But my goodness me, if you're a shopping centre with a big amount of debt and people who are basically saying, who are your tenants, that they want to renegotiate their rents and only a fifth of retail rent paid fully this week on the June quarter, these are tough times.
Look, how would it work then? Say they do have to close a shopping centre, so the centre doors might close then. Does that mean that as a shopper, you wouldn't actually be able to get into that store because the doors to the actual centre itself will be shut, regardless of whether whatever shop is in there is still trading?
Their centres
customers in.
Their centres tend to be full of the more desirable high street brands. I can't imagine a scenario where the auditors that are looking after this and the people who are dealing with the account side of things right now, as they've gone into administration, are going to close those doors because, as I said, there's just no way of making cash if those doors are closed. But what they'll be doing is looking to reduce the portfolio down, so they might start selling, and then we don't know what's going to happen to the properties, who they go to, who might buy them, other shopping centres perhaps. And then there's a medium to longer term in all of this as well, in which is these shopping centres just can't carry on filling that space with retail, and it can't carry on filling its space with restaurants either, because we've heard that the restaurant trade has been significantly affected. So it's going to have to repurpose itself. And the interesting thing about INTU is, although they were big iconic centres and you knew they were in Manchester or Newcastle or wherever, sometimes they almost felt separate to the whole community too. And I'm kind of thinking there's got to be something where it starts actually becoming more of a community player, and it has to fill that space with more community-based activities, doctors, nurses, maybe even residential.
Look, it's not just the fact that this is going to change the way that we shop. There's thousands of jobs involved in this too. I was interested in your comment that people had actually laughed at you when you warned them that we would move online in terms of our shopping habits. Did they take their eye off the ball in an absolutely enormous way then, even before the coronavirus crisis, the people who make the decisions and run these stores?
Yeah, there are some brilliant retailers, and I love shopping in Wales. There's some brilliant independent retailers in Wales, but also there are some big organisations that have been run to be as profitable as possible. They've probably not put their customers first as much as they should. They haven't concentrated on service, and certainly their strategy might have just been about making as much cash as possible in the here and now, and not building enough infrastructure for the future. And I think we've seen that in grocery when we talk about supermarkets and how slow some of them were to move online in terms of shopping. And I think that's just the same with non-food retail too. It's about investing a lot of money in something that is changing all the time. And that means that sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. And for someone who just wants safe bets with their cash, it doesn't always feel like the most comfortable. But the brands that have invested in that technology, the brands that have done more, I think are ones that are going to have a more solid future. I mean, if you take a look at Next, who are a general retail outlet and have all these same headaches, one thing I think they've done very well is they've adapted an online model and an in-store model that work cohesively very well. And the majority of their online returns are done in store. And when people return in store, they tend to go buy something else. So that's a really good circle of how it can work together in a very positive way. That's the type of investment you needed to make.
They get me every time. I'm glad it's not just me. Kate, thank you very much indeed. That's Kate Hardcastle on INTU, going into administration, that owner of big shopping centres across the UK.